I've always been told I'm a little bit backwards. Well, today I'm going to prove it when we explore open-handed drumming. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, today's hockey day and I'm wearing my 360 goaltending sweat top. Another one of my passions is working with 360 goaltending and the amazing Danny Spence, who owns the company. We mentor young goalies here in North Bay, and Dan works out in British Columbia, covers a lot of Southern Ontario. We had a great season all the way up until the COVID-19 pandemic. We're hopeful the rinks get back open so we can start inspiring and working with our young and upcoming goaltenders. So today's episode is a big shout out to 360 Goaltending and Danny Spence and all the young goalies we've worked with this year, and hopefully we're going to get to work with soon. I'm also wearing my Toronto Maple Leaf hat, and this is for my good buddy Patrick O'Kane, who's a big Leafs fan, guitar player in MLC. Anyways, hockey day in gigging drummerland. Today's episode is about open-handed drumming. I've always known that I'm a little bit backwards and my brain works a little bit differently, but the whole notion of open-handed drumming isn't something that I took on as a conscious effort. The story behind why and how I play open-handed drumming, when I first sat down to the drum kit a number of years ago, I was a left-handed person sitting down to a right-handed drum kit. And without any instruction, I just assumed that my left hand went on the hi-hat and my right hand went on the snare. Maybe I'm fortunate that I didn't have any training at the onset, because open-handed drumming, as I have found out, does afford you some different sounds and some different possibilities. And what I'd like to do today is I'd like to kind of explore with you, what is open-handed drumming, what does it afford you, and is it something you might want to try? Now keep in mind, I've never played any differently. I have explored a little bit trying to play in the traditional way, but for the most part, I've only ever played open-handed. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what open-handed drumming might do for you if you'd like to give it a try. The first thing that a lot of people who play open-handed will tell you is it affords you some freedom around the kit. So as drummers, we're always in search of an ergonomic advantage. Well, as an open-handed drummer, the possibilities around the kit are opened up as a result of it. One of my favorite open-handed drummers to watch, and I've gained a lot of inspiration from, is Simon Phillips. And I love the band Toto, and I love watching Simon Phillips move so effortlessly around the kit. Now, any astute drummers out there who watch an open-handed drummer play, the first thing you're going to notice in terms of a change in setup is the fact the ride cymbal is over on the left. So traditionally, with the ride being on the right, open-handed drummers ride with the left hand, and you will even see Simon Phillips, who tends to have his ride up here. Another famous open-handed drummer, the legendary Billy Cobden, is another open-handed drummer. And again, that ride cymbal, you'll notice where I have it, right here, nice and low and very close to the hi-hat. Another change that you'll notice with most open-handed drummers is the actual hi-hat being set considerably lower. Now, that can be a really comfortable thing for a drummer to have that hi-hat so low. Also, one of the modifications that I've made is I've actually had to cut some of the rod off here so that I'm not encumbered when I go to the actual ride cymbal. So that was one of the first things I noticed as I started to play the drum kit when I was new to the drums, is that I actually had to cut that off so that I could go from the hi-hat to the actual ride. Another possible advantage to open-handed drumming is that you actually have some creative devices that you maybe don't have in a traditional format. And what I mean by that is you're almost forced to break some rules when you're playing open-handed. I know when I sit down to try to teach myself on YouTube and I try to watch other drummers, I sometimes really have to think outside of the box. If they're leading with their left or right hand, I'm like, oh yeah, man, I don't do it that way. And it forces me to come up with different sounds and variations. One of the things that I do, and I guess it's a part of my open-handed signature sound, if you will, is I find that I crash a lot off of the hi-hat. I also, when I'm playing with MLC or any Rusty Nail or any of the bands I'm with, I also tend to have a lot of crashes off to my left. I don't have those here, but I tend to crash off of the left side and not as much off of the right. So that's another change in terms of my open-handedness. I consider being an open-handed drummer as a part of my drum sound and as a part of my unique drum IQ. I've tried to work to cultivate that sound. I do know, playing in the classic rock band MLC that I play with, because we do play a lot of kind of four on the floor type classic rock tunes, I do find being able to provide that backbeat and not being encumbered by having those hands crossed over really allows me to lay into it if I need to or if I want to. Now, of course, a cross-handed drummer with really good technique, that's not an issue, but I do find not being encumbered really does open me up to lay down some pretty strong backbeats if that's what the song calls for. So the notion of open-handed drumming then, for me, it essentially just was out of necessity and the fact that I was never taught a traditional style of play. I sat down as a left-handed person on a right-handed drum kit. Left hand went on the hi-hat, right hand went to the snare. Has it afforded me some differences in terms of the sounds and possibilities? Yes. Have I opened all those up? Most certainly not. I find that even though open-handed drummers tend to be ambidextrous, I still struggle with my foot and trying to keep everything in check that way. And I do find when I'm trying to teach myself standard patterns, I'm still trying to get that four-way independence, which I certainly don't have yet. Having said that, I'm happy to be an open-handed drummer. I think it gives me that level of uniqueness. As drummers, I think we're all striving for our own unique sound and identity, and I think it does give me that. And I really look forward to exploring some of the possibilities as I continue in my drumming journey. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to go to my electronic kit in a moment, and I'm just going to do a very quick sample of me playing open-handed and with a focus just on the hands so that you can see how the hands operate and maybe how some of the patterns and rolls are done a little bit differently from an open-handedness and some of the variations in terms of crashing. So I'm going to set that up. I'll be using Cubase software, and I'll talk a little bit more about my electronic drum setup in another episode, but I thought it would be kind of cool to feature something with the Cubase software and on my electronic kit. And so I'll give you a little bit of a demo on that. Stay tuned. Well, I hope you found today's exercise and exploration of open-handed drumming insightful and useful for you. You might want to try it. I am also going to try to force myself to play a little bit more traditionally, and sometimes I will try that just for the heck of it, just to shake it up. And again, that helps with developing the speed and the actual dexterity in terms of right and left hands. A good friend of mine and bass player for another band I'm with, Rusty Nail, Pete LaFrance, suggested that I have a unique tagline at the end of each session. If you want to put forth a tagline that you think should be featured at the end of a session, just message me, put it on YouTube, let me know. But today I dedicate the tagline to my good buddy Pete. And Pete, today's tagline then, it's definitely okay to march to the beat of your own drummer.